So let's start with the good news. Boris Johnson appears to have listened to the same people in his orbit. The thankless lobbying over the past 2 years from folk like the COVID Recovery Group, the brave anti-vaccine passport freedom fighters, and media figures like me and newspapers like the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail, who were vilified for months on end, well, it started to hit home. The hysterical scaremongers like Labour's John Ashworth, the Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, and of course, the worst of them all, Professor Lockdown Neil Ferguson himself, well, they've been exposed as clueless fools. They were wrong to say Freedom Day would lead to cases of over 100,000. They were wrong to try and stop life returning to normal for petty political gain. COVID morbidity rates have plummeted in a highly vaccinated population. So all the extraordinary, draconian, unprecedented and anti-democratic measures employed by the government over the past 2 years must now be banished to history. Tomorrow, in an address to the nation, Boris Johnson will unveil his so-called toolbox of COVID policies in order to avoid a winter lockdown. But he isn't planning to categorically rule out ever locking down the country again, which I believe he must. News of his address follows confirmation from the Health Secretary Sajid Javid that highly liberal vaccine passports won't be introduced this month. Again, that's a good start, but the government keeps them in reserve, alongside mask mandates and work-from-home orders for the winter. I'm sorry, that's not good enough for me. Vaccine passports are discriminatory, they help create a two-tier society, and they lead us towards the path of a biosecurity state. The entire Coronavirus Act should be torn up by Boris too. Some of the government plans are positive though, and I do concede that, and I celebrate it too. The UK is in a much better place than the zero COVID hellscapes like Australia, New Zealand, Singapore and China. However, there's still a lot more work to do, especially when it comes to return to work and international travel. I, for one, refuse to accept a new normal. I refuse to accept even the small prospect of economy and life-destroying lockdowns again. I refuse to accept a world where NHS GPs won't see patients face-to-face. And I refuse to accept the possibility of being told to work from home and mask up, even though there's very little scientific evidence behind such a move. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister needs to show true leadership. But the real test for him will come at the moment over winter, when coronavirus cases inevitably do soar and the NHS comes under great pressure, as it does almost every winter. That's when we'll see if Boris is still under the influence of the COVID extremists. The PM will be celebrating the decision by the Chief Medical Officer Christopher Whitty today to vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds, overruling the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation in the process. So we're pretty clear now. The government thinks jabbing as many people as possible, no matter their age, will help get us out of the crisis faster. But I believe it sets a very worrying precedent. Here's how Whitty tried to justify the decision today.
Our view was the benefit exceeded the risk to a sufficient degree that we are recommending to our ministers in all 4 nations that they make a universal offer, and I want to stress the word offer, of vaccination to children 12 to 15, in addition to the ones that have already been given it.
During the early days of the vaccination programme, we were told to trust the JCVI. Despite overwhelming and totally immoral political pressure, they held firm and they wouldn't endorse jabbing youngsters en masse. Certain health benefits did not make the risks worth it. Now the government will ignore that advice. So they won't follow the science when it doesn't suit them. Such a decision comes with consequences. Now, sitting in the pub on Saturday night watching Emma Raducanu win the US Open against all odds felt like witnessing an actual fairy tale in real time. This was the woman who, before Wimbledon, was ranked 331st in the world and only received her A-levels a few weeks ago. But it was predictably depressing how quick the toxic left were to try and politicise Emma's win because she wasn't born in the UK. Sadiq Khan didn't even bother to spell Emma's name correctly when he tweeted, Emma Raducanu'S story is London's story. Born in Canada to Chinese and Romanian parents, she moved to London at 2 years old. Here in London, we embrace and celebrate our diversity. And if you work hard and get a helping hand, you can achieve anything. Alistair Campbell preached to the Home Secretary, whose own parents are immigrants from Uganda. Isn't it great to be from a country where a child born to Canada and Romanian and Chinese parents can come to Britain aged 2 and become a national heroine within 16 years? Let's try and keep the country that way, shall we, Priti Patel? And less than 2 hours after Emma's victory, the BBC's Gary Lineker posted a 2-day-old Daily Express front page. There it is. So it juxtaposed a headline about illegal migrants being turned back to France with a picture of Raducanu with the words, "Oh, the irony." As I wrote in my column for the Mail Online today, why late on a Saturday night, as most folk like me downed copious quantities of booze in the pub as the big screen showed the tennis free to air, would these prominent faces of the so-called liberal left decide to stoke an argument about immigration and ethnicity if they were not race-baiting? And why the need to do so publicly? Why the need to so publicly define Emma as an immigrant? It's more irrefutable proof to me that it's the left in this country always desperate to start a culture war based on identity politics. The best way to show acceptance of immigrants and how truly multicultural we are is for the left to shut up about Emma Raducanu'S history and start celebrating her as what she is, 100% British and 100% brilliant. And more evidence today, the police need to go harder on the Extinction Rebellion lunatics. Today, their new offshoot, Insulate Britain, blocked 5 junctions of the M25 for up to 4 hours at a time. No wonder this bloke tried to take matters into his own hands. Now, there is nothing peaceful about the XR extremists, and they must stop being allowed to wreak havoc on our society.